America, last Tuesday morning, 29 attorneys general put on their good suits, walked into a federal courtroom in California, and asked Meta for $200 billion. $200 billion with a B. That's 3 years of everything that company makes. They asked for it with a straight face, too. That's the impressive part. Now, watch their hands while they do it. Remember, it's always the magic trick. Because every one of these AGs is saying the same word. Tobacco. And you remember tobacco. That one was real. Those companies had the studies in a drawer saying our product gives people cancer. And then they went on television in suits with nice haircuts and said the opposite. For 30 years, while people really died of it. 46 states dragged them out behind the shed for $206 billion. Good. Loved it. Best thing the attorneys general of this country have ever done, and I'll say it on this show any day you like. So now they want you to look at Meta and see that. Tobacco 2.0, same monster, new logo. And I want you to notice how bad they need you to buy it. Because tobacco lied about a product that kills the guy using it. Meta's getting sued because criminals used a website and because your kid likes his phone. That's not tobacco. That's not the same zip code as tobacco. One of these companies hid a carcinogen. The other one invented the thing your aunt uses to post about her knee. They're calling it tobacco anyways. Because tobacco is where the money is. And they know precisely what happens to that money. Every one of them knows because we already ran this experiment. You want to know what your government bought with the tobacco settlement? Golf carts, computers, portable radios that don't even work anymore, and a grease trap for a jail kitchen. Niagara County, New York borrowed $17 million against dead smokers. They owe $593 million. Bought a fryer part. So, that's the last time these people smelled blood in the water. With a righteous case, a guilty defendant, the biggest settlement in the history of the country, and a grease trap. Now they're back. And this time the defendant didn't even do it. I'm Chad Law, the last gay conservative, and America, this is common sense. If you've got a question, an argument, or think I've got this dead wrong, text 252-CHAD-LAW, and I'll answer you in the after hours. In the meantime, let's take this apart. And this is not me reading tea leaves, by the way. They're saying it out loud in print this week. NPR Tuesday, the day the trial opened. And the headline they went with is a quote from the plaintiff's side. Profits won. 2 words. That's the case. That's the whole theory of it. But keep reading because NPR does something in that piece that I don't think they realized they were even doing. They explain the shift. And I'm going to say this carefully because it's the most important sentence anyone has ever written about this trial. In this one, instead of holding the company accountable for a problematic content, they're accusing it of a problematic design. Sit in that. They stopped arguing about what's on the platform. They lost that one. That's Section 230. That's 25 years of law. So now the product itself is the crime. Not what somebody posted, not what somebody hid. The scroll. And NPR wrote it down like that, like a procedural note. But that's not a procedural note. That's the entire ball game. And in fairness to them, they disclosed at the bottom of the piece that Zuckerberg's charity funds NPR. So somebody over there is at least reading their own paperwork. But you don't have to take NPR's word for what this case is. The state told you itself Tuesday morning in their own opening statement. California Deputy Attorney General Megan O'Neill stands up in front of that jury and says Meta's business model comes down to 4 simple words. Hook, hold, harvest, and hide. 4 H's. The alliteration is magnificent. And I spent my career in marketing, so let me tell you what that is. That is a slogan. Somebody sat in a conference room and workshopped that. Somebody said, we need a 4th H. And somebody else said, hide. And the room went, ooh. That's not legal theory. That's a tagline. That's the Rice Krispies of prosecution. And notice the 4th one is the only one that's a crime. Hooking people isn't illegal. Holding their attention isn't illegal. Harvesting data, that's the entire internet. That's every app on your phone. That's the grocery store loyalty card in your pocket. Hide is the only word in there that could put somebody in a courtroom. So they built 3/4 of a slogan out of things that are legal and stapled the fourth one onto it to make a case. And then O'Neill says something else, and I had to reread this twice. She tells the court this case is not about any individual person or kid. Her words. Therefore, it's a law enforcement action, not about any individual kid. So hang on. For 3 years, every headline, every press conference, every photo op has been about kids, bereaved parents in the gallery. Save the children. And at the podium on day one, under oath in front of the jury, it's not about any individual kid? She's not lying. She's being precise. That's what a law enforcement action is. It's just a hell of a thing to hear out loud after 3 years of the other version. And then there's the one that made me put the coffee down. Legal Examiner, which is a trade press, in April, a piece asking whether big tech is the new big tobacco. And they write this, and they told themselves, and I don't think they noticed. Social media may not be causing cancer like cigarettes, but the harm is, quote, just as significant. Okay, stop. Stop. They know it isn't cancer. They wrote it down, the same sentence, and then they said it doesn't matter. That's not an argument. That's a guy sliding something across a table hoping you don't pick it up and read it. It's the legal version of no offense, but ... And just as significant is carrying 400 pounds in that sentence. Significant to who? Measured how? Against what? Cancer you find on a scan. Just as significant you find in a press release. Go figure. So there it is. NPR this week, the trade press in the spring, and neither one of them says Meta hid something. None. Read them again. They argue similar effect, similar strategy, similar feel. And here's the thing everyone's forgotten about why tobacco lost. Tobacco did not lose because cigarettes were addictive or because they caused cancer. Plenty of things are addictive. Plenty of things cause cancer. Coffee's addictive. No one's suing Folgers. Tobacco lost because they had the studies and they lied. That's why tobacco lost. They lied. That's it. The whole case was based around concealment. So the next time tells you Meta is tobacco all over again, ask them one question. Where's the fraud? I'd like to know. Where is the fraud? Not where's the harm. Harm's easy. They can make up harm from anywhere. Where's the drawer? Where's the study they buried? Where's the executive on television saying the opposite of what he really knows? Point at it. Because if you can't, you don't have a tobacco case. You've got a lawsuit with a great nickname. So let's do the actual case, because I don't think most people know what New Mexico actually sued over. And I'll give them this. It's good police work. The state built a fake kid, 13-year-old girl, profile photo, the whole thing, put her on Instagram. And then they sat back and counted the grown men who showed up. And they showed up. Big time did they show up. That part is real. Real predators, real crimes against real children. I am not softening a syllable of that. But now look who's sitting at the defense table. Not those men. Not the predators. No, the website. I wonder why. And here's the thing about tobacco everybody's forgotten. Philip Morris didn't sell a product a criminal could misuse. Philip Morris sold a product that killed you when you used it correctly. Big difference. Follow every instruction on the pack. Do everything right. Cancer. Instagram doesn't do that. There's no defect. Nobody stood up in that courtroom and said the app malfunctions. The claim is criminals used it and the company didn't holler loud enough about it, which is a real complaint. It's also a complaint about a mall. Some guy follows a kid out of the food court and we sue Orange Julius? Should the mall have more cameras? Sure. Should the mall tell you when the parking lot's bad? Yeah. But the mall didn't take that kid. And every dollar and every lawyer and every hour we throw at the mall is a dollar and a lawyer and an hour we're not throwing at the man who actually did the crime. Nobody's holding a press conference about him. There's no $200 billion in him. He's got a Corolla and a storage unit somewhere in Modesto. So here's the question I want somebody to answer for me, and I want a journalist to answer it, not a grieving mother. She's earned the right to be angry. She doesn't owe me a legal theory. But I want the guy writing the Big Tobacco Moment column to answer it. What specifically should Meta have shipped? What should they have done? Name the feature, name the setting, name the button. What is the thing that would have stopped a grown man from typing that message to a child? And notice, nobody ever answers that. They answer a different question. They tell you Meta is big. They tell you Meta made money. They tell you Meta new kids were on there. None of that is a fix. That's a motive for a lawsuit, but not a solution. Now do it with tobacco. What should Philip Morris have done? I don't know. Don't hide the studies. Don't go on television and lie. Don't tell people that cans or cigarettes are fully healthy. Took me 4 seconds and I didn't even slow down. And here's the part that ends the argument. The judge in New Mexico went looking for the fix. He had the whole trial record, every incentive in the world to find it. The state asked him to go after the algorithm, infinite scroll, autoplay, the recommendation engine. He said no, not because he disagreed. He said that's a legislator's job, not one judge in one state with one company in front of him. They asked him for real age verification. Federal privacy law was in the way. And on age checks, you know what he ended up ordering, this judge? Brilliant man, by the way. Meta's own proposal. He wrote in the order that it was, his words, far from ideal. And then he took it anyways because it was the only thing he had the power to order. So the man with the gavel, the full record, and every reason to find a remedy came out the other end with a time limit and a notification curfew. Big whoop. And he couldn't name the fix either. The columnist can't either. And I know what the answer's going to be because it's always the same answer. Warnings, labels, disclosures, tell people it's bad for them. All right. Go to Europe and buy a pack of cigarettes in Dublin right now. There's a black lung on it or a dead baby or a tracheotomy hole picture. And people pick it up and pay for it and walk out the door every day, multiple times a day. Now, do the labels help some? I mean, a little. I'll give you that. There's a little data on quit attempts, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But smoking in this country went from a quarter of the population down to under 10%, and that was not a picture on the box. That was the price. That was the you can't smoke inside anymore. That was the whole culture turning on it. And almost none of that came out of the settlement. The settlement spends 3 cents on the dollar trying. 3 cents. But here's the part I really want you to sit with. The warning label already shipped. That's what all of it is. The Scream Time notices. You've been scrolling a while. Teen accounts are private by default. Notifications shutting off at 10 at night. That is a black lung on a pack of cigarettes rendered in Instagram blue. It's the same thing. And guess what? People scroll right past it. Same as they buy the pack with the hole in the guy's throat on the front. Which brings me to the part nobody in that courtroom will say out loud and need to. Who bought the phone? Who bought the phone? Somebody did. It didn't fall out of the sky into a 12-year-old's hand. Who paid the bill on it every month? Who handed it over at Christmas? Who watched a 13-year-old type in a fake birthday? Because that's how a 13-year-old gets an account. He lies. And somebody in that house either knew or never once looked. Who let it on the charger in the nightstand at 11 o'clock at night? Look, I'm not calling all those people bad parents. I'm just calling them parents. Which is apparently now a job you can outsource to a legal department in Menlo Park. Somewhere in the last 15 years, we decided a supervision problem is a manufacturing defect. And we decided it for exactly one reason. There's no money in the other answer. You can't sue the parents, so you got to go after the deepest pocket. Can't sue yourself. Nobody's putting out a press release that says, county announces we probably shouldn't have given him the iPad. No. You can sue a company worth $1.5 trillion. And that one comes with a podium. Now, I got something wrong in March, and I'd rather say it than have some guy in the comments say it with me. I did an episode on this show called The Death of Personal Responsibility, and I told you New Mexico's verdict was $275 million. It was $375. I was off by $100 million, which to these people is a rounding error. It is not a rounding error to me. Here's what I didn't get wrong. In that same episode, I told you what the standard is: concealment, deception, known harm, lying about what your product does to the person using it. I believe every word of that. I've been held to that standard. And by that standard, tobacco is guilty as sin. And Meta is not tobacco. I'm sorry. It's not. Wrong number, right standard. And if you want to know whether about any of this is about children or about money, watch what the man who won did the next morning. It's classic. That $375 million, no jury sat in a room and decided that's what the damage was worth. It was multiplication. 75,000 violations times $5,000. And $5,000 is the state max. That's the ceiling the statute sets. He didn't pick the number, he picked the statute, and the statute picked the number. So he hit the ceiling. And then he went to the legislator to try and raise the ceiling. Nobody who thinks the punishment fit the crime walks into the Capitol the next morning asking for a bigger hammer. That's not justice looking for a remedy. That's a remedy looking for a number. All right, so if it isn't a crime, what is it then? Well, let's go back to that same NPR story, because Rob Bonta, California's Attorney General, sat down for an interview before the trial opened, and he said two things I want side by side. First one, he's talking about how Meta already lost twice this year, and he says if the trend continues, they'll lose again, and they'll have to pay a lot again. Pay a lot again. Not fix it again. Not stop again. Pay a lot. Just tells you where the priorities are, right? And then the second thing, he says what he wants is for Meta to stop using features that hurt kids. And then he says, I think it's pretty simple. Pretty simple. All right. Then answer the simple question. Because in that same story, Bonta is asked what the number should be. What's the penalty? How much should they have to pay for all this damage against children? And he doesn't give one. He can't name his own number. The states floated $200 billion at a hearing. Meta's paperwork says the exposure runs to $1.4 trillion, and Bonta says Meta's just waving that number around to make the case look ridiculous. Fine. So what should it be, Rob? No answer. These men have been at this since 2023. I mean, if somebody hurt your kid and you sued him, you'd know the number. Your lawyer would know the number. It'd be written down on a piece of paper in a folder. 3 years in, and the best they've got is a lot. Because the number was never the measure of everything. The number is whatever they can get. And this didn't start Tuesday. Fortune magazine, Alexandra Sternlich, in 2023, 3 years ago, before a single juror was even seated, wrote the headline, $200 billion playbook that kneecapped big tobacco is coming for Mark Zuckerberg. Playbook. That's Fortune's own word. A playbook is not a crime. Playbook is a thing you take off the shelf because it worked the last time. And look what leads that headline. Not the harm, not the kids. $200 billion. First 6 words. A business magazine printed the strategy 3 years before the evidence even showed up. And every time somebody floats a wealth tax, a billionaire tax, some new levy on the richest people in the country, I ask the same question, and I've never once gotten an answer. Show me what you did the last time around. Not the plan, not the press conference, the receipts. Show me the last enormous pile of money you were handed and what came out the other end. Well, here's a pile. $206 billion handed to the states 28 years ago. And some of you already know where this is going because I told you about it last month. I did an episode on this show called The Problem Was Too Profitable. And in it, I told you the states didn't just take the tobacco money. A lot of them sold it, sold the rights to Wall Street for cash up front. And I told you the check was tied to sales volume. More smoking, bigger checks. Less smoking, smaller checks. 10 weeks later, one of those bonds went into default. First one in the history of that market. I would love to tell you I saw that coming. I didn't. I just read the paperwork and said out loud what it obviously meant, and the arithmetic did the rest. But let's go see what they actually did with the money. All right. So they're going to win. Let's say they win big. Let's say Meta writes the check and every attorney general gets his photograph. Where does the money go? And don't guess, we know. We've got 28 years of receipts from tobacco. Remember, same playbook. 46 states, $206 billion paid every April forever. And the day after they signed it, the day after, Philip Morris raised the wholesale price of a pack of cigarettes 45 cents. Wholesale price. Almost $1 retail. Largest price increase in the history of the product, announced to cover the cost of the settlement. So think about who actually paid that $206 billion. Not the executives, not the shareholders. No, a guy on a loading dock in Toledo with a 2-pack-a-day habit and a very strong cough. The sick smoker, the exact person the money was supposedly for. We sued the tobacco companies on his behalf and then handed him the invoice. He paid it a quarter at a time at a gas station counter for 28 years, and nobody ever told him. That's who bought it. Now, let's go see what it actually bought. Niagara County, New York. They took their share of the settlement. They borrowed against it, $17.8 million cash up front. Now they owe $593 million. 17 in, 593 out. And I want you to guess what they bought with it. 40-year debt? Dead smoker money? Well, they bought golf carts, computers, defibrillators, portable radios, $42,000 worth in 2002 that don't work anymore. A reporter named, and I'll say this wrong, Cesare Podkul drove out there and took a picture of them. They're sitting in a room today. You can go look at them yourself. Oh, and don't forget the grease trap. They bought a grease trap for the jail kitchen. Very important. Seriously, somebody stood up in a room with a flag in it and a pitcher of water on the table and said, you know what we ought to do with the cancer money? Fix the fryer in the prison. The note comes due in 20 years. Your kids are going to pay off a grease trap for a jail. Nobody in that room said a word. And Podkul is the guy you should be furious you've never heard of. He's from ProPublica, went through more than 100 of these deals, and here's how he found it in his own words. He sorted a column of data and looked at who was paying back the most on what they borrowed. That's it. That's the whole investigation. One guy, a spreadsheet, one column. Meanwhile, every county attorney in America apparently couldn't locate a calculator. And then he wrote the line that explains this entire hour, basically. Just as mortgage lenders bet that home prices would keep rising, the tobacco deals relied on optimistic predictions of how much Americans would smoke. Read that again! They needed us to keep smoking to keep these deals whole. Not in a smoke-filled room way, in a spreadsheet way. Basic arithmetic. Which is worse because nobody has to lie. Nobody has to be evil. It just quietly becomes true that the county's budget works better if you don't quit smoking. And then we quit. Everyone. June 1st of this year, Nassau County, Long Island, New York, $35.9 million in principal due. They had 14.7. Your paycheck came in at $1,400. Mortgage is $4,400. First default in the history of this market, 20-some years later, $80 billion, never happened once. And why? Because Americans quit smoking. Smoking went from a quarter of this country down to under 10%. And this is one of the great wins of my entire lifetime. People are alive who wouldn't be. And in an office on Long Island, that showed up on a spreadsheet as a problem. There was a meeting, a warning. In November, Nassau's board sits down because they can see this coming, and an official report back that they went and asked, and I'm quoting the minutes here, major banks are the experts in the field, and the experts came back and told them there's nothing to do. You can't refinance, you can't restructure, there's no exit, you get to sit and wait for June. The meeting was in a public building. There are minutes. Anybody in that county could have walked in. Nobody walked in. And when Bloomberg called the county after the default, The county officials, of course, they didn't respond. And it's not just them. Ohio's own bond paperwork said the state would collect $317 million this year. Ohio collected $203. You built your whole year around a $317,000 salary, and you ended up making $203,000. That's not a miss. That's a third of it gone against a number a grown man signed his name to. $9.7 billion of these things now sit in the ratings category. That means we don't expect to be paid. Not risky, not keep an eye on it. We don't expect it. And I have to tell you what they named them because I read this 3 times. New York City's is the TSASC. Fine, boring. Ohio is called Buckeye. Wisconsin's is called Badger. Alaska has the Northern Tobacco Securitization Corporation. This is lung cancer money. This is the settlement from people who died coughing. And grown adults sat in a conference room and named it after a woodland animal. I want a tape of that meeting. I want to hear the guy go, what if it was friendlier? Wisconsin now sends 100% of its tobacco money to bondholders, all of it gone before it lands. But hey, Badger. So here's the ledger on the greatest legal victory in American history. The smokers paid for it. The counties borrowed against it and blew it on golf carts. And the bonds are now defaulting. And today, the states pull in $21.7 billion a year off tobacco money and tobacco taxes, and they spend $728 million of it helping people quit. 3.4%. And that number went down again this year. You win a settlement over your kids' medical bills and you spend 3 cents of every dollar on the doctor? Righteous case with a guilty defendant, $206 billion? And you go buy a grease trap for the local jail? And you all know Ron, my French bulldog. Ron gets a lot of airtime on this show, and Ron has done nothing to earn it. What you probably don't know is I have 2 Akitas out there, 2 of them. Japanese bear hunting dogs, 110 pounds apiece, most loyal animals I have ever been around. And I don't mean loyal like your golden retriever is loyal. I mean an Akita will die trying to protect you. That's not a story. That's just what they are. Now, there's a rule about Akitas, and I don't know if this is real or if it's just one of those things somebody repeats, but they say to never let them taste blood. Once they get it, a chicken, a squirrel, another dog, something switches on, the prey drive goes into overtime, and it does not go back off. My female, Gigi, killed a coyote. Now Gigi and her brother cannot stop. They literally rip them in half like stuffed animals. I'm not losing sleep over it. I hate the coyotes, but that's the part I need you to hold. In 1998, government got a taste, $206 billion with one lawsuit. They have not stopped hunting since. Opioids, vaping, now Meta. And when the budget's short and the revenue's flat and there's not a politician alive who wants to run on a tax increase, that's not when they stop. That's when they hunt. And here's where somebody in the comments says, fine, who cares? It's just Zuckerberg's money. Let me tell you why you should care. And this is the part that should actually scare all of you, and it's got nothing to do with Facebook. You're going to pay for it. You already did once. 45 cents a pack, remember? Corporations do not have money. That's not a talking point, it's arithmetic. A corporation is a machine that collects money from customers and merely passes it around. You fine it $200 billion, it does not open a vault in the back. It has to raise the price. It's the only trick they know. It's the only trick they've ever needed. But the price is a small part, folks. Here's the big one. And this is the thing about tobacco that nobody ever tells you. There's a law stapled to that settlement. It's an attachment. Model legislation, they called it. And the states were told to go pass it, and 46 of them did. Here's what that law does. It forces cigarette companies that never signed the settlement, never lied to anyone, never had a study in a drawer, never owed a dime to a single state, to pay escrow money anyways, just for existing, just for trying to sell a cigarette in America the honest way. And it goes further. If your brand isn't on the state's approved list, a distributor can't put a tax stamp on it, and your product becomes contraband. The state then comes and takes it off the shelf. So sit with the shape of that. The 4 companies that got sued for lying about cancer walked out of that courtroom with their market share protected by statute. The punishment built them a moat, and they've been sitting in the castle ever since. Now put that on Meta. $200 billion, court-ordered abatement funds, age verification systems, human review teams standing by 24 hours a day, compliance officers, auditors, 6 state attorney generals. Can Meta absorb that? Meta could absorb that on a Tuesday. Meta has more lawyers than most countries have soldiers. Now, 3 kids in an apartment with an idea for something better than Instagram, can they absorb it? And this isn't me guessing. New America, and understand that's not a conservative shop. These are not my people. Looked at age verification mandates and said flat out, the costs are a barrier to entry for startups, and they bias the market towards larger established companies. That's the left telling you the same thing I am. So we're going to spend the next decade suing the giant, and the only thing we're going to build is a wall around the giant. You want to know why nothing ever replaces Facebook? This is why. Which brings me to the glasses on my face. These are Meta glasses. People ask me if I'm a tech bro. I still don't know what that means, and I've decided not to find out. I wear them because I have Shrek ears and earbuds hurt. My prescription's in them, and my team talks to me straight through these while I'm sitting here, and the mic doesn't pick it up at all. You can't hear them talking to me. So I'm biased. I love these things, but there it is. And there are lawsuits over these now, too. People getting recorded who never agreed to it. And yeah, a camera on your face probably makes a creep's job a little easier. But it wasn't hard before. 2-way mirrors, nanny cams, a camera and a smoke detector, a phone laid face down on a table. People who want to watch other people have never once in the history of the species been stopped by a hardware limitation. Same way predators found children a long time before Instagram had a login screen. The product didn't invent this behavior, and we're not focusing on the behavior. It simply gave these criminals a shorter commute. And that's the fork. And we keep taking the same side of it. When a product makes a crime a little easier, you can go after the behavior, or you can go after the product. Only one of those has a defendant with a market cap. This is pure government greed and wealth redistribution in its finest, wearing a tobacco costume. And the second thing they never mention, tobacco worked as a business model for the states because cigarettes come in units. You count the packs. That's how you calculate the check. That's the only reason the bonds could exist at all. Meta doesn't have a unit. So when this ends, where everybody knows it's going to end, a national settlement, 50 states, decades of payments, exactly like 1998, somebody has to sit down and decide what the money gets tied to. And there are 3 choices: advertising, revenue, or users, or teen users. Think about that one for a second. You tie the money to teen engagement when the entire stated purpose of the lawsuit is to reduce teen engagement, which means every state in the union becomes a creditor of the exact thing it says it's trying to stop. Again, just like cigarettes. And here's the one nobody in 1998 had to worry about. Cigarettes weren't going anywhere. Meta might. Ask yourself what a bond backed by MySpace revenue is worth today. These deals run to 2046. And, Meta might deserve some of this. I'm not the guy going to tell you that the company is a charity, and New Mexico caught real predators on the platform, and I said so, and it won't matter. Because none of that money is going to a child or children. It's going to a general fund, and then a budget office, and then someone's going to figure out they can borrow against it. They get tashed today instead of over 20 years, and then somebody buys $1 million grease trap. And 10 years from now, when that money's thin and the budget's short and nobody wants to run a tax exercise, they'll go find the next deep pocket. They always do. They can't not. They got a taste. So take 3 questions with you, any settlement, any industry, the rest of your life. When you see the press conference and the flags at the podium, how many years does it run? What's the money tied to? And can it be borrowed against? Nobody ever asked the third one. It's the only one that matters in 20 years from now. And one more thing, because I think it explains something a lot bigger than any of this. People keep asking why everyone's so angry, why nothing ever seems to work, why you can watch your side win and feel worse afterwards. It's not because we keep losing. It's because we keep winning. And nothing changes. Just like tobacco. We won the biggest lawsuit in the history of this country against people who lied about cancer. 28 years later, a bond on Long Island just went under. 3 cents on the dollar goes to helping anyone quit. And Tuesday morning, they walked into another courtroom and asked for another $200 billion more. You can win every fight you pick and still lose the war, if the people holding the trophy get to keep the money. All right. And before I let you go, Chad Parker Law is the home base. The books, the editorials, the Daily News, and the free Common Sense Conservative Manifesto. That one costs you nothing. Go take it. And go look up where your county has one of these tobacco corporations sitting in its books. Most people have no idea theirs does. If you find one, text me, 252-CHAD-LAW. And if it turns out your county bought something dumber than a grease trap, I need to know immediately. Text me. And if you've got something out of this, share it. Not with someone who already agrees with me. Send it to the one person in your life who thinks every lawsuit is justice happening. Remember, the only ask is if you see us, share us. All right. Now, Reagan said something about this that almost nobody quotes. Government does not tax to get the money it needs. Government always finds a need for the money it gets. They found a need for the money they got. The need was the budget. In America, that was common sense. Folks, stick around for 10 seconds while I answer all the texts that came in during the live broadcast. All right, you guys stuck around. Let's do the part I like. These come in on 252-CHAD-LAW while we're taping. I read all of them. Some of them are not nice. All right, Marcus 3318. Chad, so you're on Team Zuckerberg now. Bold. I would rather be waterboarded. No. Here's the difference, and it matters. I don't have to like a defendant to notice a bad case. That's the whole idea behind how this country does law. The worst guy in the room still gets the same rules as everyone else, because the second we start writing special rules for people we don't like, guess who gets to decide who we don't like? I don't want Mark Zuckerberg protected. I want the rule protected. He just happens to be standing on it right now. All right. Great question. Denise, 7702. My daughter is 14 and I have watched what Instagram did to her. You have no idea what you're talking about. Nice. I believe you, I guess. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about your own kid. That would be pointless. Here's what I'd say, and you can throw it out if you want. The thing that helps your daughter is not $200 billion. It never was. $200 billion goes to Santa Fe and disappears into a budget line. What helps your daughter is the boring stuff. The 48-hour rule that makes a human being look at a report, the account being private on day one, the notification shutting off at 10 o'clock at night. Those cost Meta almost nothing, and they change what happens to a kid. I want 100 more of those and one less lawsuit and one less press conference. And I really do hope she's doing all right. I mean that. I'm sorry. Ray ending in 5140. Chad, how do I find out if my county did the bond thing? My brother-in-law is on our county commission and I would like to ruin his weekend. Best text ever. Here's the real answer. They're never called the county tobacco bond. They've got names like minor league baseball teams. Search your state plus tobacco securitization and see what falls out. Then pull your county's audited annual financial report. If there's one of these attached to your county, it shows up in there as a component unit, which is the accounting term for technically not us, but also us. And when you find it, don't ask him why they did it. He probably wasn't there. Somebody did it in 2005 and left. Ask him how much settlement money is still coming to the county. And how much of it is already spoken for. Then watch The Room. That's the whole show right there. All right, Thomas, ending in 6659. Okay, Doomer, instead of Boomer, who's next? Fair. I don't know, and anyone tells you they know is selling you something. I'm sure it'll be AI. But you don't need a name, you need a shape. Legal product, enormous number of users, a balance sheet you can see from space, and a harm that's real enough that nobody wants to be the guy defending it on television. Look at what's already forming up. Ultra-processed foods, sports betting, which, by the way, the states are running, so that one's going to be fun to watch, and AI. New Mexico's already got a chatbot case in the work studies. They said out loud. But the tell isn't the lawsuit. Everyone covers the lawsuit. The lawsuit's the fun part. The tell is about 18 months later when some state's treasurer's office puts out a press release about smart debt management. That's the one to read. All right. That's it for tonight. It was a short one. Go check your county. God bless you, President Reagan. And as always, may God save America.
Wonderful. It's so marvelous.